Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Halo World Championship debrief from the Narrative Bravo alongside Onset, and we are about to dig into a fantastic World Championship. Mark, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It feels weird to be home and know that we don't have another event coming up. The Halo World Championships was a perfect end to a crazy season. It's certainly one that I'm going to look back on in however long with fond memories, because it was a great time, man. I think we had a lot of performances we were excited to see, a lot of great matches, and at the end of it, I think a deserved winner as well to cap off an amazing year.
Yeah, I agree. It was poetic. It was fitting, amongst many other things that we'll dive into today. Let's start off by recapping predictions. I think the short of it is that you win and I lose.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I'm more happy. I think everyone wins because we actually got predictions out of you for the whole season.
It's true.
Which is a very, very rare thing. So everybody got to get a little bit of an insight into what you're thinking, which is always great.
Is scary.
But there's a reason maybe that we stay away from that normally, but I will take the win. Even though it wasn't perfect, I will take the win.
Yeah, and speaking of, actually, of not perfect predictions, we should dive into some comments from the pre-show and see if anyone predicted the top four correctly, because as many of you will remember, we had everyone give their top fours. Want to give a shout out. We had over 100 comments on the pre-show, so thank you for everyone who kind of chimed in and joined in the prediction fun. Let's see if anyone predicted the top four correctly. We'll go through a few highlighted comments really quick. One of my favorites was from C-Web. He said, "Here's the thing. If Optic can win the first 3 games of the series, they win against SSG." Very close. But he also said, to his credit, he said, "But the longer SSG plays, the more they figure things out and counter, and Stellar is hitting shots, then that's just the game." So he had a lot right there, but of course, even with the top 3, Optic unable to close it out. We will dive into all of that later. Also, Where's Waldo Production actually had the top 4 teams overall correct, but not in order. He did have Pure in 4th, and there are a few people that had Pure in 4th. Also, T. White had 3 out of 4 placings correct, Pure in 4th, but no FaZe in the top 3, Shopify instead. Then you have Anthony Matiga, who had Pure in 4th, but no Optic in the top 4. We also want to give a shout.
That's a wild call, by the way. That's a wild call.
There are a bunch of wild calls in the comments, and honestly, some of them you can't blame them, but there are definitely a few that trend towards wilder. Also want to give out shout outs to Kenny D, Renee Man, and also AJ Axe. They had all the teams correct in the top 4, but in the incorrect order as well. So in the end, Mark, you and I knew that this tournament felt nearly impossible to call, but it really it proved to be just that, because we actually haven't discovered a single prediction, ourselves included, for even the top 4.
Yeah, pretty crazy, right? That's wild. Like, everybody was contributing in the comments, and we love you for it. Because it was so fun for us to read through and go, oh, it's not just us who is struggling to work out who's going to win here. No one got it right, which I think sums up the whole year. It was just unpredictable and exciting to watch.
It really was, yeah. If you guys do want to see just how wide the prediction spread was on this one, feel free to, of course, take a look at the final batch of comments on the pre-show. The predictions are all over the place, and as Mark just said perfectly, it sums up just not only how hard this tournament was to call, but how wild and fantastic the year was. So let's get into one big takeaway from the World Championship. Mark, you start us off.
I have to go with Space Station Gaming. And I feel like they were the deserved winners of the Halo World Champs. I feel like it's their year. It's as simple as that. I think I said it when we finished it. It's like no one could doubt this is the year of SSG, because 3 out of 4 major wins plus a World Championship, only 1 slip up along the way. Just an incredible year, incredible stories for all 4 players that I'm sure we'll delve into a little bit more as we go through and talk about the tournament. But for me, SSG to come out and show this level of consistency in a game which a lot of people have said, like, the gap at the top is so small. I think they showed that there is still a gap, and they are still being chased by everyone, even some of the incredible teams we have in the Halo Championship Series. So for them to win it, not get that bracket reset, go on a straight run through the winner's side as well, I think it's the year of SSG, and they deserve all of the credit, all the plaudits, and for me, without a doubt, best team this year.
For me, it's going to be Pure as my big takeaway. I think it's kind of similar to, my takeaway from Atlanta being the Pure story, Pure breaking into the top 4 once again. Of course, it's so much more important here at the World Championships, especially for the guys on Pure to come off of a top 12 in Salt Lake, which would have been an emotional roller coaster to have one of the best placings of your career for some of these players, and then to place top 12, and maybe everything about your year comes into question heading into the World Championships, and instead they go on quite a run, which we'll also detail later on. But yeah, for me, the pure breaking into the top 4, I think, sits just after the kind of SSG headline. We'll start off next with how the pools fell and any big surprises in pool play, because in the pre-show we were lucky to be able to spend a lot of time on pools, so it feels like it might be fitting to kind of go through maybe just any surprises that we found from pool play.
I mean, I'm gonna go with, first up, we've got 3 written down here, 3 that we had in our minds, which is ITB, Akave, and Native. I actually want to start with Akave on a positive note, because they go game 5 with FaZe. They kind of threw the game 5 as well because they were leading, so they could have won that, and they come second in their pool overall. Arguably should have won their pool.
Yeah.
And what an amazing performance from those 4 gents, right? And we were talking about how this is life after tapping buttons for them. They've shown that they have found a level now where any team that plays them has got to be worried. And it is not a case of chalking up a series win now when you play these gentlemen, because they have got a huge amount of skill, a huge amount of knowledge now. And it's just been accrued over years and years of just playing at these events, playing against some of the best in the world, and watching that steady, consistent improvement. So that's the one that jumps out to me first. On the flip side of that, disappointment for Native Gaming. Mm-hmm. You know, the first time that they made it into pools last event at SLC, first time they got into the top 6, it was their best placing of the whole year, and then they just fall really, really flat in pools.
Yeah.
And I think it was very disappointing for them. They go out. You know, it's a tough one to take for them, having worked so hard to get into this position for HWC, to essentially just not have a run. And then the other one is ITB, who, credit to you, I will say.
How about it?
I mean, credit to you. Somewhere along the line we threw enough predictions at the wall that something was going to stick.
So true.
But ITB comes second in their pool. They beat Pure in a game 5. Wootum, shout out you. Great pop off, by the way. And yeah, they managed to take home second place in their pool, and what we thought was going to be one of the biggest pool play matches of the whole tournament. And it was. So you're looking at surprises. When you look at the top 3, top 4, when we were talking about overalls, maybe not too surprising to see the teams there at the end with their history and their achievements. But for ITB and Akave, I think they really did make everybody stand up and take notice in pool play. And like I say, Native, just disappointment after the hard work they've done in SLC.
Yeah, and couldn't agree more. When you talk about the rematch from Native and Dark Inside, we knew that was going to be a grudge match with Dark Inside wanting revenge against Native. And it's crazy that goes down to a 50-48 game 5 that essentially ends Native's tournament life. We knew they were going to be a shark in the water in that 4th seed, and it made Pool C, as we said, not just the hardest to call, but maybe the hardest to play in as well. Yeah, let's quickly also go into the 5th through 8th placings. I guess we'll start off with Quadrant placing top 8 on the year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at 7th and 8th, you've got Quadrant and ITB sharing those spots, the 2 European teams. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when you look bigger picture, right? And we always, I mean, me especially, I'm always looking at what the EU teams do. Quadrant last year with Legend on the lineup kind of redefined what it meant to have success as a European team. I think if you look across the last 10 years, if you were to say we have 2 European teams taking home 7th and 8th above some of the teams, the names, the players that are in the Halo Championship Series at the moment, mm-hmm. you would be so happy with that.
Yeah.
And I think both teams maybe be a little bit disappointed they didn't match their best placements of the season, especially ITB. You know, they had a chance to go on and get top 6, but just fell a bit short. They played against Sentinels, who they beat in the game 5 in SLC, so they've shown they could beat them, but Sentinels were playing some great Halo this event.
Yeah.
And I think for Quadrant, and there's been some questions about where the level is for this team, what to expect, where the ceiling is. But I think if you look across the year, 7th and 8th is pretty much where you would expect them to be.
Yeah.
So for both teams, bigger picture, I think top 8 for 2 European teams. At the start of Halo Infinite, you would have thought it was undoable. It would have been one team who made a run, and then, you know, another team who's just kind of, unfortunately, falls as a disappointment for somewhere on the way. Mm-hmm. That's been the European story. So shout out to both teams. Don't know what's going to happen with both those teams, by the way. Hearing some things in my ears after the event.
Maybe some mix-ups.
Yeah, I heard some things in my ears after the event. I won't share. But a lot of discussions about teams and things, and I'm sure we'll touch on that later. But 7th, 8th quadrant, ITB, I think both won't be disappointed and both will be pretty happy.
Yeah. Probably not as happy in 5th, 6th is going to be Shopify Rebellion after an amazing year. Only really losing to the big three the entire year. And then to, just like Quadrant, be another victim of the Pure run. Shopify in the end, getting 3-0'd by Pure in a loser's bracket quarters to place 5th, 6th.
Yeah. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is.
I would say for Shopify. Absolutely heartbreaking. It's kind of difficult to summarize where it all went wrong. 3-0'd by Pure as well, who were on a great run. But to get 3-0'd, I think, against Pure, which is a team that in the previous event in SLC, we were like, oh, are they the real deal? Is this what we expected to see? Are they now landing a little bit in the final placings where we expect them to be? No conversation about what they do on Sunday because they didn't make it to Sunday. Mm-hmm. And again, if you go back and the story we've been saying is like the chasing pack are not just nipping at the heels of these big teams; they are taking chunks out of them.
They're chomping.
Yeah, they are chomping. And this was another example, right? You cannot take anyone lightly in any game. And I'm sure that they didn't. I think it was just Pure played some great Halo and Shopify didn't play up to their expectations. But to not make it to a Sunday for a team whose story all year long has been, what do you do on Sunday? Can you get over the line? Can you get to a final? To have to watch from the stands is a very tough one for them.
It is. I agree also that they're victims of, if you just kind of throw any other team that's in lower brackets round 1 or 2 into that quarterfinal, you probably have a good chance of Shopify just winning the series. I think they really are victims of a really hot Pure. Mm-hmm. I also it's important to give credit to Shopify on their performance otherwise, just in terms of how they look. They won their pool 3-0. Then they 3-0 Akave, a very strong series. Most importantly, their upper bracket semi against Optic was really respectable. They win Solitude King, and then the next 3 games are quite close. Live Fire Slayer is maybe the exception at 50-41, but Forbidden CTF goes to 3-2, and Recharge Strongholds goes to 250-237. So if we're completely honest, talk about Forbidden and Recharge. They are probably on each game type, games 3 and 4, 1-4 dead away from winning those games. Of course, in the end, all that matters is the final result. But it's worth noting that I think they still played until the Pure series very good Halo. It's also heartbreaking to think that they might have been only 2 plays away from being in your upper bracket final. And it was still, I think, a very important and memorable year. That said, though, still a disappointment for them overall at the World Championships. Yeah,
I agree. It's disappointing. Really tough for them to take, I'm sure, after their year. But a team who was on the up and up a little bit was Sentinels.
Yeah.
Finally delivered somewhat near what they had promised all year when we saw this lineup come together. 5th, 6th, but, some really good series in there as well. Revenge on ITB, like I mentioned in the bracket as well, to solidify that position. I mentioned it was a game 5 that they lost back in SLC. And then they finally fall in the bracket to FaZe, who had just fallen down from the upper bracket after losing to Space Station. So that's a ticked off FaZe who wants to get a little bit of revenge. Mm-hmm. So Sentinels, I think, to finish 5th, 6th after the year they've had, they'd be pretty happy.
Yeah.
And I think Sentinels fans finally had something to cheer about. So no better place to do it than the Halo WC. There's a little bit more money on the line as well. So when you finish 5th, 6th, it means a little bit more. So a little bit of good news. And I feel like we've barely mentioned Sentinels all year. So it's good to see them back in amongst it and getting that big win.
Let's get into the top 4. We've already mentioned Pure a little bit, but Pure placing top 4 at the Halo World Championship. It's probably most important to note they did this run while placing 3rd in their pool, which set them up with no room for error. They had to win every series in bracket play just to stay alive. They 3-0 C9. They 3-2 Quadrant down to the wire. 3-0 Shopify, as we've talked about. And my God, it was... You and I casted this first series on Sunday morning. the FaZe Pure series was one for the books in the lower bracket semifinal all the way to Game 5.
Yeah, oh boy. One of my favorite series. I think the best series of the Halo World Championships as well. It was so close.
Yeah.
Like, it was insane how close it was. Game 1, Livefire, King of the Hill. FaZe were 3-1 up, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe 2-1 up. They were 2-1 up, I think. But they had, I'll choose my words very carefully here. They lose Hill 1, and then FaZe piss on them for the next 2 hills. Mm-hmm. We were like, this is over. Like, this isn't close. This is a golf in class of these two teams. But then somehow they tie it up, and it's the last shot with the camo play in and around the second rotate on that first hill.
Yep. Timing
is perfect to break it. They get that one, and then all of a sudden we've got a game on our hands. And from there, they lose the next game, and we're like, oh no, FaZe are angry. It was 50-35. We were like, this one's a steak dinner. But then we have that crazy overtime Argyle game, 3-2 to Pure. They go up in the series. And then you should talk about the recharge strongholds, because one of the best games we've casted in Halo Infinite, without a doubt, I think. Certainly for me.
It was. We should mention, of course, it was interrupted by a reset, which was unfortunate, but still gave us an unbelievable game. I would say make sure you watch at least the second part of that game. In the end, it was 250 to 248, an unbelievable run of Pure just trying and their absolute hardest to hold on to a series of trip to 2 caps. And in the end, FaZe clutches up to win it. Yeah, essentially, it feels like the only 4 dead they got in 4 minutes of play.
Yeah. If you listen to our time when we're commentating, it's quite fun. I watched it back. It's quite funny. Because we're like, oh, okay, FaZe, they're looking great. And we're kind of like, this is done. And then there's a few moments where I think jokingly we suggest that they could come back.
Yeah.
Just to hold on to something.
I remember, and then
there's a moment where I think it's Druck or someone's in tower, and they get a 3 or 4 dead, and your voice changes, your tone completely changes to, this is happening. And I was like, okay, this is happening.
Yeah.
And it was a wild end to that game.
I remember it well, because I remember early on in the game, I'm like, now let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm not going to say anything crazy here. And then all of a sudden, there's a few more 2 deads and 3 deads, and you're like, okay, this game, this was, like you said, about 100-point minimum run, if not a lot more. And at that stage, you're like, oh my God, this might happen. In the end, FaZe clutches up 250, 248. That sends us to a Game 5 streak. So let's not forget.
What if they would have killed Snake? Why didn't they kill Snakebite inside of B?
Thank you for saying
that. Just gonna say. I don't want to bring up bad memories for Pure fans, but
okay. I don't understand it. For anyone who hasn't seen it, we'll paint the picture. Snakebite is essentially the last player alive, or at bare minimum, the only player in position to reset a stronghold. He is in and around pipes and bat ledge, and he goes for a B reset and conversion. Drops down left bat and starts to cap.
Cherished who's shooting him.
Starts to cap. There are players from Pure around Tower and Whirlpool who have grenades. I went back and checked because I had to.
I also did the same thing, interestingly.
I'm thinking, because when I watched that, I'm thinking back, and I'm like, okay, no one must have had nades. Because yes, people, of course, the back and forth meta of resetting or capping B in any game type is, of course, that the player dodges bats, and you'll sit for a second, someone shoots, and you kind of play a mind game of which bat you're going to dodge. So someone might pre-nade left bat or right bat. Anyone who's played the scenario knows what we're talking about. Snakebite stays left bat the whole cap. No one throws nades at either battery, and he essentially gets the free cap on B when it felt like someone could have even just aped it and flown at it, let alone naded it. I think Snakebite gets the series and world championship saving play for them. I mean, for their run. Of the tournament. I went up to him afterwards and I was like, I caught him backstage when he was warming up for the next series, and I was like, dude, I don't know how you got away with that, and I don't know how they didn't nade you. And he's like, I feel the same. He's like, I don't know. I just
you can hear it in PJ's voice as well. He's like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I was just
just a wild end to that game, and of course, leave it to Snakebite to find a way to keep the team in the series. Keep in mind.
Isn't that, sorry to jump in, isn't that like the most perfect example of a play that doesn't show up in stats?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And also the most perfect play from like Snakebite. Like, I'm telling you, man, whether it's a zombie apocalypse or some crazy scenario where I need to depend on someone, I am sending in Snakebite.
Yes.
That is it. Let's not forget also the reason we are giving so much weight to that moment is it was FaZe's tournament life on the line. Pure was up 2-1 at that stage. That ties it up 2-2, sends us to a game 5. A Street Slayer, and let's not forget, these teams had played the game type before. This was a grudge match of the Atlanta series and an SLC repeat, and there was history between these teams. They were tied in overall games, and it goes all the way down to a 50-47 FaZe win in game 5.
One of the best series. Like, every game in that series had you on the edge of your seats for different reasons.
Yeah, that takes us well into third place. FaZe, of course, we've just talked about them quite a bit. They narrowly escaped being victims of the Pure run. Otherwise, a great tournament from them. They also narrowly escaped, not winning their pool, as we talked about in Game 5. So a lot of Game 5s from FaZe, but we know just how clutch they've been in them. And they managed to, of course, not only secure Sunday, but also then, due to that Pure series, secure top 3. The way they fall at the end is kind of, I think, properly representative of the end of the season.
Yeah, I think you look back on the one series I think that would have hurt them most is the SSG upper bracket semifinals, because that didn't feel close.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They win game 1, 2-1 Solitude King, but then it's 50-43, 2-1 Forbidden Flag, 250-98 Recharge Strongholds.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might have been a moment, even though they did great to kind of go on, beat Sentinels, beat Pure in that game 5, and then get to the lower bracket final. I think that might have been an indication for them that they're not as close as they thought they were. So yeah, I think third overall for FaZe sums up their season, doesn't it? It was SSG and Optic who were the best teams, and FaZe were chasing them down. Obviously they got the major win, which is crazy when you think about it, and the rest of the placements they had for the year. But yeah, I think FaZe, I don't know what's going to happen, man. Like, it's crazy to think that roster might make a move with the talent that's on it, but something isn't clicking. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that, because I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if there was a team change somewhere along the way. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot of team changes, to be honest with you, ahead of next season, but FaZe is the one for me to keep an eye on, because I think when you've got players who are used to winning,
mm-hmm.
not making it to a final is unacceptable. I don't see that roster with a future, as crazy as that sounds.
I agree. I think FaZe has a lot to be proud of. They had resilience to make sure that they still placed in a very respectable fashion, but it is not the World Championship form that they were, the title that they were defending. And you think of the talent on that team, and I agree. You and I and a few others were sitting and wondering, okay, what do these FaZe players do? What kind of, is there a God Squad? You have to imagine that things point towards a God Squad roster to take down SSG. We probably won't speculate too deep on what that looks like. That's a different show, but I agree. You get the feeling that the FaZe players are going to be hungry. Not only going to be, they have been hungry for continued championships. They haven't found them, and the changes will be made to find them.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a storm for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm here for it. It is, how do we take down the big bag nasty of SSG? I think for the rest of the pack.
Definitely. That brings us perfectly into the grand final.
What a final!
Woo, man.
Feels really like, how long ago was it now? Like 4 or 5 days, something like that.
Less than a week ago, yeah.
Feels like it was yesterday for me. I don't know how you feel.
I agree. It does not feel like time has passed. I'm still living in that grand final.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I feel. I can remember every single moment.
Yeah.
And it's going to last for quite some time.
Man, were we ever treated as casters, as a community, as everyone in the room, everyone watching, were we ever treated to a hell of a grand final? Just because it deserves the time, we should go through, I think, quickly each game in the series, just to kind of recap the picture. We started off with not just an opening few games from Optic, but even just what an opening on Live Fire Strongholds for Optic. 250 to 196 was your final score there.
That's not close in a grand final with those two teams.
Right.
Then you go on to Streets, 50 to 44. Again, a 6-kill difference you would say is not close. And then I kind of jokingly said we had some great Argyles, but that was one of the best Argyle CTFs we have had. And for the nerdy people among us included, one of my favorite matches to cast all year because there were such small margins and every single player was moving around the map with such trepidation because they knew what going 3 or 4 dead would cost them.
Yeah, I agree.
It was amazing. It was a chess match. It was literally a Halo equivalent of a chess match.
It really was, and I agree. I think everyone has their own feelings about Argyle, ranging from people who don't like it and find it too low scoring, all the way to people who
the honest people.
Yeah, all the way to people who enjoy the game type. You never know what you're going to get with an Argyle CTF. You have score lines all over the place. I agree, man. Chess match is the perfect way to put it. It felt like the most high stakes, maybe match of the grand final and match I've seen in quite some time. You think about other matches and maps, and you think about the way that Aqua CTF is played, even Forbidden. People will make pushes and take chances and go into 50-50 fights, without the trepidation that you just described. Instead, what you had in that Argyle was both teams knew how much was on the line here. Not just, of course, the amount of cash that was on the line, but like, as you say, each kill at the midpoint. If a player was in the vent, if a player was sniping at screens, like absolutely no one wanted to give an inch, and it resulted in this like beautiful, normally we wouldn't say that a standoff gameplay like this is kind of beautifully executed, but it was amazing to watch and cast.
You know what it felt like for me? It felt like a search and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
Like a round-based, CSGO. It was like that. It was 4v4, wait for someone to get a pick, but do not get picked.
Exactly.
And then from there, we will inch our way forward. And then it goes to overtime, and Optic get the cap. Yeah, to go, essentially, 251-96 game 1, 50-44 Streets, 1-0 Argyle. Optic are 3-0 up in a finals, and we're like, here we go. We're settling in. We are warming up our digits to get our fingers around a cold Red Bull for a reset because, it's what we do. We have the emergency Red Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And we find ourselves going into game 4 where SSG... I mean, do you know what the crazy thing about Argyle was as well? Do you remember? Like, neither team had lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Both teams were 8-0 on that game type this season. So someone had to lose.
Yeah.
And then we go into the recharge oddball, and SSG's oddball is their best game type, but Optic, it's really weird because I always felt like one of Optic's best game types was oddball, but the last few events, it had actually fallen off a little bit. And SSG get their first game on the board.
And it was clean, too.
It was clean.
Yeah. That was, I think, going into game 4, tell me how you felt, but I'm thinking, okay, Optic looks good enough that they're going to grab one of these. And I'm like, I agree. I'm getting ready for a second series. We're telling everybody to settle in for a long night of Halo. It's already, it was already getting quite late. There's going to be a lot more Halo to be played. As soon, however, as game 4 hit and we saw the way it was won, I think everyone started to be like, oh, okay, maybe this is going to be a different story.
I agree. And the worry for me is, I was joking with you, right? You remember I was talking about Optic. I was like, they got to a final. I was like, I feel like Optic have found every single way to lose so far this year. And I was like, they can't, like, they're 3-0 up in the series. Even if they lose in a bracket reset, whatever it might be, I just felt from there, it was like Optica, they were so locked into the series when they were 3-0 up, especially winning that like nail biting Argyles. Like they have to be able to take one of these next few game types. But I think you summed it up perfectly. The way that SSG won that, and the thing that was missing from those first 3 games for SSG, we barely talked about Stellar or Legend.
Mm-hmm.
And big plays coming in from them. Optic shut them down. Like, how many times on Argyle did we see Stellar have a snipe, but the pressure that Optic would put him under, it was 1 or 2 players. They wouldn't challenge. They wouldn't give him an easy shot. And then all of a sudden, those 2 players had started to have an impact in that game 4. And we were like, oh, here we go.
Yeah, it's a really good note that you bring up, because Stellar, I believe, and maybe even Legend, but both negative in games 1 and 2.
Stellar for sure was, yeah.
In game 3, Stellar was positive by a few. I think we were keeping a very close eye on the score on the stat lines because of how rare they are. And I think you pitched it perfectly, but it was not a question in the grand final of if Stellar and Legend would go into full Super Saiyan. It was a question of when. And for Optic fans, they were just praying it would have been sometime after Game 4.
Yes.
Unfortunately, for Optic fans, it started in Game 4. You could argue it started to warm up a bit in Game 3, but Game 4 is when it hit. And then we'll continue recapping the scores, but my God, did they ever not look back?
Yeah. The game after that, I was like, oh no, like this is SSG 50-39 live fire.
Mm-hmm.
And when the oh no happened, was Formal gets, in my personal opinion, the best clip in Halo Infinite with the kill tack.
Yep.
And after he finishes the kill tack, about 10 seconds later, I think SSG had tied the game. And I was like, wow. To have 5 players in a row dead and not take advantage of it, I felt like that game burst the Optic bubble. I don't know how you feel about it.
I do. I feel the same way. For that to have attack and then for it to end 50-39 is quite a statement.
The legend run, the legend takeover was sniped towards the end of the game. That was...
And the game, let's not forget, the game was close for a while. And then, Legend starts doing Legend things and, starts heating up. That brought us to a 2-0 Solitude King. I think a lot of opportunities for Optic to try to find form. The concerning thing for me, and I remember it well, and I'm going to need to watch it even for a third time, was the amount of control in the slaying department that Optic had off the opening and not able to get points on the board. And for me, that was the immediate sirens going off of, whoa, what's going to happen here? Because despite, I think, maybe one of the best openings you could ask for, they just failed to capitalize.
One thing that SSG do so well, though, I feel, like, there's not many, like, 4 dead in Halo Infinite is such a punishing thing. Mm-hmm. But I feel like out of all of the teams that we have, SSG are so good at playing off the back foot and creating chaos and, like, getting their trades off of respawn that when you're looking like a Solitude King of the Hill with a bottom middle hill first, whatever they do, they just keep you out of the hill. Like, it might cost them 2 or 3 dead every time, but there's always someone annoying. Like, you remember Stella top middle? He had a shock at one point and, like, there were 2 or 3 dead and he just hits a double. Yeah. And it's like, oh, Stella's here. And there's just little things like that where they just make things awkward. Like they challenge a lot of fights because they have this crazy individual skill when you think that you've got map control, and they just keep it scrappy. And I think when they're on the back foot, keeping it scrappy is like, if you can do that, you're going to get an element of success out of it. And I think, you're right. Optic had elements of control at the start of that game and there were close hills, but you never really felt like Optic were in it. I don't know if you feel the same. It felt like the big moments all went the way of SSG.
I agree. I think that's the best way to describe it. I think Optic had opportunities to get back into it, but it was SSG outplaying or the 3rd or 4th player alive, getting things like a double or the correct angle on the only player near the hill. And that brought us to Game 5, Recharge Slayer. Game 7, of course. Recharge Slayer. Optic's last chance to make it happen. And it was the SSG momentum and strength at that point was just too much to counter.
The one moment that jumps out to me from that matchup was the bound shock onto Formal with camo.
God, of course. I remember it very well on stacks.
So Formal takes the decision to clean up a one shot. And then I think his camo comes back. And I think he shoots towards Bound, which obviously camo kind of disappears a little bit. And Bound just hits him with a shock rifle from top gold. And I think the game is close at that point, or Optic are down a couple, but Formal has camo. And I think that moment, you felt like SSG had it. Yeah. Like just that one big play. And shutting down that big moment, keeping shock in your control, keeping your teammates in a position to get off of respawn. All these things kind of snowball a little bit. And even though that shot was big, we were waiting for Stella to have a game, and he saved it for that Game 7. He led the way in kills for the team. And they close it out 50-38. Optic obviously crushed, not being able to reset that bracket, getting reverse swept. But I think I said it at the top of the show. I'll say it for the rest of the time. It was the year of SSG. Any other winner, I felt like wouldn't have summarized their dominance this year. So a huge congratulations to Space Station.
Felt like the punctuation point of the entire season, not just for Stellar, but of course for the entire SSG team as they take it in a clean 4-3 reverse sweep.
Yeah, congratulations again to Space Station, the deserved winners. And I think I wanted to touch upon some of the stories of the SSG squad because there are some very, very notable ones. Bound, I remember fondly his first event win, which was the SSG event last year. His ascension to a player who was a question mark, I think, a lot of times. It's like, how good is Bound? Is he able to adapt his game to become a consistent championship winning player? The answer is yes. He gets his first Halo World Championship. And I mean this with the greatest of respect to those three players. A footnote in comparison to what Legend has achieved.
Yeah, what a year from him. You can't really even begin to describe it, and it sits so uniquely within Halo history, the year that he's put together.
Yeah, I mean, the kid had never been in a grand finals before this season. He'd been to a Sunday once. Like, just think about that. The kid has given up his life. Fair enough. You know, his life was Halo Infinite. So he's maybe not given that up.
But giving up his home country.
Giving up his home country, moved away from his family, gets an opportunity. His first event on the squad, wins it, which is an incredible moment. I mean, it gives me chills thinking about it now. You remember the interview we did with him afterwards where he couldn't believe what he'd achieved. You fast forward to the end of the season, he's got 3 major trophies. He's got a Halo World Championship, and he's the regular season MVP. Like, you can't give him enough credit. And at the end of it, the thing that always will stand out for me for the rest of time is his interview after they win. He doesn't talk about himself. He doesn't just talk about SSG. He thanks every single fan of competitive Halo for whatever team they support for making the esport what it is. And I think that's such a, it summarizes everything about him. He's such, and I say this a lot, such a good kid, such a humble kid. And he is, in my opinion, the superstar of Halo now.
Yeah.
He is not just ability in game, but out of game. The emotion he showed when he got the MVP trophy. I mean, a lot of discussion over the years about lack of emotion from Halo players in these big moments, right? But I think he showed what every other player feels, but he wasn't afraid to be overtaken by those emotions. I can't say anything else but how proud I am as a European to look up to a player like that, to see what he's achieved, how inspiring it is, and just how proud I am to see a kid like that go on and have this success. It has been a whirlwind of a year, and I don't think it has been matched. I think it's the biggest breakout year ever. Yeah, for him to go on and have that success is amazing, and it's just so inspiring, I imagine, for a lot of people around the world who are watching and going, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And he's shown that you can do it.
You really can. It's an incredible example of what you can do if you grind. It's unbelievable. So that recaps us for the year. What a year it's been. Of course, that also gives us a chance to very quickly talk about 2025 news. Of course, confirmed a 2025.
I thought you were going to say it gives us a chance to rest. So, yeah, also true.
Oh, yeah. So everyone will get a chance to rest. You and I, Lord knows we both need it, to say the very least.
Oh, God, it feels good to be home.
It's good to be home. It's going to be, it has been a long year with a lot of travel, and we are excited to take a bit of time off, but it's even sweeter to take the time off knowing that 2025 is locked and loaded.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't know cities yet. We don't know dates yet. Even other things that might be announced approaching 2025. But to know that there is a year kind of waiting for us again, another $1 million world championship, is, of course, very special. We feel very lucky to be able to do this. And I know fans who have also been around for about 2 decades feel very lucky that we still get to watch this level of competitive Halo. And I think I would be speaking for many when I say this is already, I don't know if anyone would have thought, year 3 of Infinite will be one of the most memorable years of professional Halo. I don't know if anyone was ready for this kind of year. And I will say the story that we got, the potential team changes that we could see, all sets us up for a very exciting 2025.
Imagine if someone had a microphone just hanging over that after party. Some of those conversations. Ooh, I won't go into them. But strap in, everyone. Strap in.
It's going to be a potential turbulent off season. That also
please, no one ever bring a microphone to one of those after parties.
No, Clutch will make sure that thing gets just crushed in his hand before everyone's eyes. Also, huge news, of course, on the Unreal Engine news. Halo Studios, of course, the 343 name being dropped entirely, and a new studio name moving forward. We won't do a full deep dive on that. Of course, I'm sure all of you who are listening have already seen the video. Overall, very exciting news for the franchise, and you could say without a doubt it's the biggest news since way before Infinite in terms of direction for both the franchise and the studio.
I agree, and I think it's some of those re-renders, some of those renders that came out of the Unreal Engine, and like the Chief has never looked better.
Dude, I mean,
like that energy sword. Oh,
that place,
we got chills watching that.
Yeah, that place went nuts for a reason. By the way, we should mention you and I knew a video was coming, but we hadn't seen it. So we got
we dig for it as well. We were trying.
We saw that live with all of you at the same time, and we were backstage watching it, and you've already seen the reactions of the crowd. I think we all felt the same way when you have each of the render reveals, even the first environment shots, all the way, as you said, to the sword, and of course all the way to Chief's turn. My God, did things look good. And I think another thing I'll mention is you and I were both really impressed with kind of the acknowledgement. It's important and everyone knows it, but Halo has not innovated in the same way it did Halo 1, 2, 3, right? Since then, it has not been doing that. There are ways that it has, but it was nowhere near the level of the first 3 games. So I think the acknowledgement from the studio of this game needs to be best in class, innovating, driving this industry.
Yep.
Is just an exciting thing to hear. And I think it's, a lot of people looking forward to the future in a way that probably in the biggest way in a very long time.
Yeah, I think everybody is excited. Now it's like, okay, Halo Studios, show us what you got. Yeah. That's how I feel. Like, let's do this thing now. All the PR stuff is done.
Yeah.
Now produce something special.
Exactly. A lot to look back on fondly from 2024. A lot to look forward to in 2025 and well beyond coming out of this weekend. It was an amazing Halo World Championship, and we also want to say for one last time this season, thank you so much for all of the support on the narrative. It's been a blast for Mark and I to be able to put together. We've had a lot of fun doing it, and can't thank you enough for all the watches, all the listens, all the comments. Yeah, it really means a lot. And it was a year of great events, great Halo, great food, and just unforgettable storylines all year. But before we close, Mark, I want to give you an opportunity for some closing thoughts on the year.
Guess who I want to thank? I want to thank Andy Bravo Dudinsky for being the best commentator in the world and leading the way ahead of every event. You see, people don't know this about you. One of the hardest workers there is. One of the people who puts in the most time, effort, care, and love into what you do. It's been a blast to do the narrative with you, but to cast with you all season, dude, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. So there you go. There's your thanks.
Dude, I'm not kidding. It means a lot. It really does, and I really appreciate it.
All right, let's wrap it up then before Andy says that.
It really does mean a lot, you saying that. I'm not kidding. It's not to be too wholesome, but I tell you all the time, and I tell people all the time, it's a hard carry from you in the work that we do. Couldn't be happier with the matches that we were able to cast, the work we were able to put in this year, and I want to say thank you right back to you. And I think that's a great place to leave the year. As I said, lots to look back on really fondly from this season.
Yeah,
more so than maybe in a very long time. We can't thank you enough for supporting the narrative all year long. And that's going to do it for 2024. We can't wait to see what's ahead in 2025 and beyond. We'll catch you next year.